So today, I'm going to talk to you about the single trick to increasing the ROI of your content performance on social. And I always start with a quote, and this is one of my favorites from Ralph Waldo Emerson. "The fox has many tricks, the hedgehog has but one, but that is the best of all." So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. I like to call myself, by the way, as an intro, I'm Carrie Kerpen, I'm the CEO of Llikeable Media, and I was introduced before, and I like to call myself a one-trick pony. And the reason for that is that I have been working in social media, specifically in the social space, for over 10 years. And that makes me like really old. If you're looking at the social space 10 years ago, what we were doing. And throughout that, networks have changed, consumer behavior has changed, content has changed, all of these things have changed. But I believe that there is one trick that no matter how much changes in the social space will always, always work. And so I am kind of like a hedgehog, right? The fox is really smart. They know lots of different ways to be really sneaky. The hedgehog, who's the smartest of them all, knows one trick, which is how to escape the fox. So I'm going to teach you today basically how to get ahead of the curve in social and help increase your content's performance by doing just really one simple trick. You ready for the trick? Okay, I'm not telling you yet, but it's coming up really soon. Okay, so before we start, I like to give you a little lead up. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so before we start, when you're creating your content, I want to give you a simple checklist. Okay? So right before you start, I want you to think about it. Does your content, one, add value to the intended target? Okay, think about it. We are in a totally distracted society. We need things that help us be better. Does this help us be better? Does it help us make our day better? In fact, does it help their online experience versus interrupt their online experience? Take off your marketing hat for a second and put on your consumer hat, and you're looking at your phone, and you're looking at your Facebook or your Snapchat or any of these things. What are you there to see? You're there to see, depending on your age, pictures of your friend's night out, pictures of your friend's babies, who got married. Think about what you're looking at. And think about now us as marketers coming in and interrupting that brand experience. That experience that you're having as a user looking at pictures of your friend's babies. That is rough. So do we add value and do we help their experience versus interrupting it? And then finally, this is really important, does it make their face move? So I want to talk to you a little bit about making your face move, okay? I don't know about you, I take the train in every morning, and when I look at my phone, this is my face. Scrolling through my phone, dead to the world, right? Okay, and I'm looking at content, and every once in a while, I see a good piece of content, and I'm like, oh, that was so cute, or sometimes I'm like, oh, that was hysterical, or sometimes I'm like, ooh, I'm surprised. If it makes your face move, it's going to give you a reaction, okay? Not every reaction has to be that you have to be the punny, cheeky brand on social. You just have to think about, what do you stand for? What type of value can you add? And can I really make your face move? Okay, so I want you to think about all these things before we create content. But then I want to ask you a single question about that. Okay, so let's go through this checklist, and let's see, is it going to make their face move? Is it going to add value? Is it going to really not interrupt their day? How do we really know? How do we really know? When we're sitting there in a boardroom, whether you're with an agency, whether you're internal, whether you're anybody, how does anybody really know that content is going to perform? I liken this a lot to the mirror versus the photograph. This is me, basically, not really, but it really is. Every morning in the mirror, I'll go and I'll get dressed, and I'll be like, I look great, I'm ready to go. And then I'll see a picture of myself, like today, coming up here to speak. I'm like, look at this skirt, it's got great pattern, da-da. And then someone here will take a picture of me, and I will look at it and be like, what happened? Do you know this? You know this, right? Okay, or you see yourself, a lot of times this happens with weight too. You feel like you're looking great, you have no idea that all of a sudden you put on 15 pounds, and then you see a picture of yourself and you're like, holy moly, how did this happen? The mirror versus the photograph. I think this is what we run into with content production all the time. We are sitting around talking about our brands and what works for our brands in our own silo. And that's the same. That doesn't mean, by the way, you need to go outside to find outside sources, consultants, agencies, all of these people to do this. I think they all run into the same thing too, because you get too in it. You're looking in the mirror versus looking at a photograph, okay? So I'm building up your trick for you. The single trick to improving your content ROI is, okay, you guys listening? You're all listening? Okay? No, that's it. Are you listening? Are you listening? If you are using social listening effectively, you can predict how your content will perform. I would say, this is unscientific poll. I have lots of scientific numbers on each individual content performance. This is a Carrie Kerpen number, okay? At least 20 times. You will save time, money, energy, and ultimately contribute to your ROI much greater if you listen before you create content. Before you create, to know what's going to work and what's not. So today, I'm going to show you a little bit of how to listen. And by the way, I don't have a listening platform. I'm not saying you should use a specific platform or anything like that. I'm coming at this for you completely agnostically, looking at this and saying, gosh, I've been creating content for 10 years. The networks changed. The types of content changed. The technology changes. But this always stays the same, and it always works. Okay, so the art of listening. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this and give you a little bit of just stats behind it, and these are real, not Carrie Kerpen stats, actual stats. 76% of marketers say they need to be more data-focused to succeed. 74% agree that capturing and applying data to inform and drive marketing activities is the new reality. We know that we need to do this, but how do we do it? There is so much out there, and if you're listening all day, how are you going to get anything done, right? You think, like, what can I do? I'll just be staring at Twitter and Instagram and all these things all day. Well, actually, I can help you kind of process how that will work. They're at a loss how to do this. We are drowning in data, you guys. All of the information is out there, not just about your brands, about consumer behavior, about all of it. We are drowning in it. You could look on Twitter all day and see open source conversation of people saying things nonstop that you would never imagine they would say, even in a focus group. Even in a focus group. But we are starving for insights from that data. We are totally data rich and insight poor. And we need to get a lot better at those insights. So I'm going to show you a little bit of how to do that. Okay, here are some things that I want you to listen for, because almost always, so this is also the difference between when I was talking about listening in 2006 and when I'm talking about listening today. It was probably about 2008, I used to say this, and immediately everyone would go in. You guys are much more advanced in this now, and they would go on Twitter and they would search their brand name. Now, I mean, you all have Twitter handles, you're all looking all the time, and it's much more widely used, but listening goes way beyond listening to what people are saying about your company, okay? I want you to listen for what's trending. Doesn't mean, by the way, that you should jump on what's trending, but I want you to know what's trending and with whom. Something that's interesting to a millennial might not be what's interesting to somebody who's a boomer, but there are things trending for each of them. I want you to listen to how different targets speak. Again, that doesn't mean if you're a college, you should be calling everyone Bay. You know, it just means that you should know how they speak so that you can understand and really relate to them without having to emulate them and then automatically be uncool. You need to know how your different targets speak. You need to listen to your competitors. And again, that's not to emulate. That's to see what they're doing and what's working and what's not and what you can gauge to get inspired from them. You need to look at conversations. You need to look at conversations that are happening between people within your target, actually unrelated to your brand. Look at how they interact with each other. Look at what they care about. You need to listen to your own communities. That's kind of a given nowadays. Really, everyone is looking at their own comments, and Facebook and Twitter and all of these things are looking at what people are saying to them. But I would also tell you to look at what people are saying to you, but also look at what people are saying to each other. One of the most amazing things I see for many years now on Facebook, on the Facebook community, if you're looking at any page, is not just like when a brand comes to their own defense, but when community members each kind of have a dialogue about things within the product. I see that all the time, and I think that's really incredible. Listening to that type of thing is really key. And then finally, forums. Forums are greatly underrated. Whatever your industry is, Google forums for this. forums for real estate, where people are having conversations, forums for parenting, there are forums that are specific around basically every industry, every vertical, and they're very, very, very specific. We work with StubHub, and we were looking at how to tap into broader-based theater stuff. So they do tons of stuff with sports and music. They want to tap into theater. Of course, the first place I went was Broadway forums to see what people are talking about, because they're talking in so much more detail than they ever would on Facebook. Remember that in forums, actually on Facebook or on Twitter, you're talking to your whole community, right? And so you have a little bit of social capital there. On Facebook, when I post things, I don't always post my work stuff. Why? Because I'll annoy every high school friend constantly, right? So if I take a picture of myself up here, I might not post that on Facebook. I might post it on Twitter or somewhere where I have or LinkedIn, where I have a more professional setting. They're not going to talk as much about their obsession with Broadway with their entire community. They're going to talk about that in a forum. Same thing with parenting, same thing with real estate. All of these things are going to go into specific communities. And so this is one tactical area that I would tell you, dig into forums much deeper than you are today. Okay, so now let's talk about how to listen. So there are a million tools. I mean, these are a few. If you're looking at Sysomos or you're looking at the Marketing Cloud, you're looking at Simply Measured. I love Social Bakers. I love looking at all of these different groups that provide these sort of listening and analytics that make it really easy. But tools are only one piece of the equation. The biggest piece of the equation is you. The biggest piece of the equation is deciding what you're listening for, and then what the heck you're going to do with that information. What am I going to do when I'm creating content to make this resonate? And really, when you think about it, it's kind of hard. When you're looking at all that information, it's like you're drowning in it. And so I would recommend, going a certain number of keywords at a time, and then kind of digging in, looking at them and say, okay, should we be talking about this? Or should we be using this type of language? Looking at specific areas bite by bite. Listening is an ongoing experience. So it's not like you have to have 10,000 keywords at all times every day. It's just a matter of really tapping in and picking areas and focusing on them. And so from there, you gain insights. And from insights, you have to inspire into action when you create your content calendar. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. So listening versus insight. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So I have some that I did, and I think some that some other people did, so it'll give you like a nice round experience. So do you guys know Pure Barre, the workout studio? Okay, so Pure Barre brings back like ballet fitness, bar fitness, so all of the movement towards studio stuff and doing all of these different classes. And Pure Barre is one that has a lift, tone, burn philosophy. Basically, you're doing ballet in workout. And it caught on, it was really, really popular, expanding really rapidly, and we worked with them. And so one of the things that you would not think of at all for Pure Barre is football, right? That would be counterintuitive. Why would we be discussing football with a women's lifestyle fitness studio? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we found that many, many women in this category, which are middle class to upper middle class to affluent women who are very focused on their health, focused on their bodies, are talking about their experiences when their husbands are watching football. Either they're watching with them, or they are like preparing and doing all kinds of things while their husbands are watching football. Okay? So they're having this experience. And so we went to Pure Barre and said, you have to do something around this. They thought we were totally nuts. We said, let's try it. So this is what we did. We did a football lift, tone, burn game. When your team scores a touchdown, do this move. Someone in the room yells at the TV, do this move. The opposing team scores a touchdown, do some planks. During halftime, here's what to do. This post performed, I'm going with, it was in the 20s, 28%, let's hope, better than any of their other content. And it also helped link back to, we had a link on the text piece of this that helped link back to sign up for our class. And so this post, this simple post, this counterintuitive post, performed for them. Why? Because we were listening. We're going to look at the next client, going from workouts to poop. Okay, so this is IBS Check. This is a healthcare brand that tests for IBS, and this is really interesting. So this is more, I put here because this is more typical of what you'd see on the social networks, which are great, like kind of more subtle references to this, which is like, here are recipes to help you not have your IBS act up. So use garlic-infused oil instead of garlic. This was actually a video that came up with a recipe, which are very, very popular on the networks. But what we found was that people in this community actually love and need to talk about their issues and talk about relatable experiences. And so we showed this date of this girl having to run to the bathroom. Again, went wild. Went wild. Why? Because we knew that people who have health challenges are really looking for common experiences with other people who have that same challenge. And we knew that humor resonated with this audience and that you couldn't take it too seriously. The reason we knew that was that before we create every single piece of content, we listen. And that's exactly what I want to convey to you, is that you can do the exact same thing. So let's talk about listening in context. So I gave you, yes, we should listen. Yes, listen to all these things. But I want to give you some things that are kind of common mishaps that happen with listening too. So let's start with this. Don't speak like your target unless it's natural. I think I mentioned that about the college before. So we work with Grubhub and Seamless, and we do all of their social and all the work with them. This is a typical person who orders Seamless. Polar chicken pie is da bomb. Does that mean that Seamless needs to reply, you da bomb? Not necessarily. We, in understanding how these kids and millennials speak, we also know from watching other brands that they don't like to be pandered to. And so it's a matter of balance. So we are not stiff by any stretch of the imagination, but what you will see is we also don't try to be cool mom. Do you guys know Cool Mom? Mean Girls? Anyone? Only a little. Okay, I'll tell you Mean Girls, Cool Mom reference. So Mean Girls is a great movie, classic, and in Mean Girls, there's a mom who's like, hey girls, do you want some alcohol? Hey girls, and she's like in basically a velour sweatsuit. She's trying to be very cool, and she's cool mom. But when in essence she's actually like the worst mom. We can't be cool mom. We have to engage with them at their level, but without being quite trying to emulate them or pander to them. So don't be cool mom. Don't comment on things that are totally irrelevant to you unless there's a clear connection. Here, I pulled this example, and then Prince died, which was like, I could have really done this big. This is Crocs. This is when David Bowie died. Your magic will be missed, but your inspiration lives on forever, David Bowie. This is so nice. Do you think David Bowie would ever be caught dead in Crocs? David Bowie? In his heels and his cool boots and all of his things? No, there's no relevance here. This is a perfect example of taking a trending topic and feeling the need in your guts to comment. I really am a brand, and I feel passionately about this, and I need to say about David Bowie. No, you don't. You're interrupting people who are actually mourning David Bowie, people who listened to him, people who loved him. This is unnecessary. It really is. And so listening in context means that we're going to listen, we're going to know that David Bowie died, we're actually going to see if there's any influencer out there that wears our Crocs that loves David Bowie. We might know that, and then there's something that's really relevant, but otherwise, no. This isn't even the worst of the worst. The worst I leave up for a minute, which is people who comment on like Martin Luther King Day with, I have a dream, you'll buy my stuff. This is Casey Delivers, dreaming of free delivery on Martin Luther King Day, just totally tone deaf. There is so much of this, and that is what you need to think about when you're listening. When you're listening, it's not about just tapping into what's trending. It's about knowing when and where and how to comment because you're listening, because you've seen these sort of errors, and because you know what is relevant to not only your brand, but your audience. Don't open a conversation without thinking it through. By the way, the next two brands I show you are brands who do a killer job in social. This is a really good example of not thinking through kind of live stuff. So these two brands are committed to listening. Let's start with McDonald's. So McDonald's is really committed to listening. And if you went to South by Southwest, they had the most incredible kind of socially involved group. And I know there are people there. They're amazing. However, a couple years back, they opened a hashtag called #McDStories. And they asked for McDonald's stories. Tell us your McDonald's stories. Well, what stories do you think came out of McDonald's stories? One time my burger fell on the floor. One time the guy picked his nose and put it in my nuggets. And I mean, basically, like, it was like nonstop inundated. So part of the things that we need to know with not opening a conversation without thinking it through, you never own a hashtag. You know what I mean? And you don't own a conversation on the internet. You're interrupting the conversations on the internet. So when you get into a space where you want people to engage, make sure it's because, like I said to you before, you're listening, you're adding value, and you're making them enjoy their experience. This is from, actually, Starbucks had a great conference, and I love Starbucks Social, by the way, and they had something open at the store level to spread the cheer. Well, this was in the UK. Occupy Manchester found out that they were doing this, and they were then immediately took over the whole thing. So imagine at the store, all of these tweets going up on this live screen wall. Starbucks projected unmoderated tweets at the Natural History Museum, and they took over. So if you can imagine that at the store level, at the Natural History Museum, like really just thinking through that kind of open source stuff. And through listening, you know that stuff you have to think about. Okay, so now we've listened, right? And we think, okay, we listen, we know what we want to create, we think this will resonate really well. Okay, so it's created through curation, so what do we do? Well, I'm going to give you a content calendar hack that's going to save you time and money with listening, okay? This is the thing I think, this I haven't been doing for 10 years. I've been doing it organically for 10 years, but I haven't systematized this within my team until a couple years ago, and I believe that it changed the way that we create content. Okay, so you have a typical content calendar. Your content calendar, there's a million different ways to do content calendars. But one of the ways you would do is you would say, okay, here's this date. Is it promoted? What's the category that it's under? What's the text? And then what's the image? So you could have this in a Google Sheet. You could have this wherever and however you go. Here's what I challenged my team to do when they're presenting content calendars. I want to look at a content highlight report. Here's an example. You take one piece of content. What's the purpose of the content? So the purpose of this piece of content is to really increase engagement by incorporating some holiday stuff into the Gerolsteiner water images. Okay, that's great. How do I know that this is going to work? I go through the proof, and I ask my team. Well, they show me three things. In Q4 of 2015, posts featuring custom imagery where bottles are tailored to specific occasions had 35% higher total engagements. Posts of this type accounted for the top 5 highest performing posts of Q4, and posts of a timely nature invite fans to engage with the content in the moment. They're showing me the why before it goes out. I encourage my team to take 3 pieces of content off of a content calendar and do this. Let me tell you why. You don't have the scale or the time to do this for every single piece of content you create, but when you do this for 3 pieces of content you create, you will think like this for every single piece of content that you create. It's a shift in thinking instead of being, hey, look, this post performed really well, yay, to, hey, look, this post is going to perform really well because, hey. That will save you time, money, and results. And that's something that I want you to think about when you're going forward with creating your content calendars. Finally, I end with a Mark Zuckerberg quote. Listen, Facebook, you could talk about this all day, that millennials are not on Facebook as much, and they are not, by the way. You could talk about mass audience. Facebook does have mass audience. It is an incredible user experience. They are doing amazing things, and they're an incredible company. I love what they're doing. But with Facebook, they do have to innovate because the Snapchats of the world and these things are coming up and being really, really important. I believe in Mark Zuckerberg and his organization, and Sheryl, that they are going to move forward to be able to make their utility resonate across all different age groups. It just won't be in the instance it is today. But I believe strongly that Mark Zuckerberg is the type of social leader that drives forward listening and connection in a way that no others do. And I'm going to leave you with this quote: people influence people. Nothing influences people more than a recommendation from a trusted friend. A trusted referral influences people more than the best broadcast message. That quote is from 2007, right about when I started my agency, almost 10 years ago. The more things change, the more they stay the same. I wish you a lot of good listening, and if you have any questions for me at all, you're welcome to ask, and happy listening. Enjoy, and hope your content turns out great. Thank you.